You've been searching for the best way to generate passive income in your life and heard that real estate is a great way to do it. But you're tired of all the so-called gurus who are all talk and no substance. Get ready to celebrate because Kevin Buck has spent 14 years successfully making it happen. This is the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Now, here's Kevin Buck.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen. Kevin Buck here again with episode number 6 of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Today I have a great guest lined up for you guys. Charles Dobens, who is the founder and president of the Multifamily Investing Academy and also the president of Dobens Law Group. In our interview today with Charles, you're going to learn the following items. You're going to learn how slow and steady multifamily investing will make you rich. Just like the old saying goes, slow and steady wins the race. You're going to learn why outsourcing your management may not be the best idea, and Charles will tell you why. You're going to learn why he loves apartment buildings and stays away from other asset classes like retail centers, office complexes, industrial centers, things like that. You're going to learn how he's building a high six-figure business which he can then pass on to his children. You're going to learn how he can save new apartment investors from the common mistakes and pitfalls that most of us go through when we get into this business. And I just, before we move on, to this week's interview, I want to, number one, apologize about the length of this podcast. You see, I typically like to keep my podcast right around 40 to 45 minutes. And Charles and I, we got to talk, and he started sharing such great content that we went way over that limit. And this podcast, I think it's going to be slightly over an hour in length. So just know that it's chock full of great information. Charles just basically let everything out. He basically walked us through his entire investing career, all the highs and lows, and just kind of gave us a total background on where he started and where he's at today and where he hopes to finish. So I also wanted to kind of give you a recap of my week. As I'd mentioned in last week's podcast, in fact, I recorded last week's podcast while I was on vacation with my wife in Turks and Caicos, and we got back late Saturday evening, and we had an awesome time, and we were there for 6 days total, and it's just a beautiful place. We're actually there with her work. My wife is a sales rep for a electronic medical record company, and she won President's Club last year, so she's an awesome salesperson. So they basically sent us on a trip to Turks and Caicos, but all expenses paid, most expenses paid, and beautiful hotel, beautiful beaches, beautiful weather. We had the opportunity to actually have some activities while we were there instead of just laying around the entire time. We actually went wake surfing, got to go out on a fishing boat and catch fresh conch, which they went ahead and cut up and made conch salad right there on the boat. Got to hang out in one of the most amazing infinity pools I've ever seen right there at our hotel. And I also got to drink some very expensive beers. The island is probably the most expensive island I've ever been to. The cheapest beer you could find, even off the resort, was $7. So tabs racked up pretty quick, but we had a great time and got some much needed R&R. But we're happy to be back in the States and happy to get back to our 3-month-old son. We didn't necessarily want to leave him, but he was in good hands with grandmother and great grandmother, but we couldn't wait to get back to spend some time with him. So other news that's going on in my life, I'd mentioned a few podcasts back that we had a pretty large mailing campaign that we had just rocked out, mailing to a lot of different apartment and mobile home park owners here in the Tampa Bay region of Florida. And glad to say that our phone has been ringing off the hook. So we're getting tons of good quality leads, working through those leads right now, and we're going to continue sending out these mailers on a monthly basis. But I'll keep you updated and let you know if any of these transpire into an actual deal that we put under contract. But as it looks now, we'll at least have a few that we get under contract. Whether or not they make it through due diligence period and we end up closing on, we'll just have to wait and see. I started reading a new book while I was on my trip. Actually, towards the end of the trip, I finished up the other book I took. And I try to read about one book every week and a half. This is a book I had started reading a few years back, and I pulled it off my shelf and dusted it off and figured it's the right time in my career to read it again and kind of brush up a little bit on the different habits and techniques that they go through in this book. But it's Networking with the Affluent, which is written by Dr. Thomas J. Stanley. And it teaches you how to crack into the affluent groups, how to influence leaders of the affluent, gaining high caliber endorsements and leveraging your contacts. It's a great book to use and kind of reference when you're out there trying to raise money for real estate deals. I mean, some great strategies in here and how to get in front of, the high net worth individuals that have the money that will partner with you on real estate deals and, help you with your funding. So I definitely recommend the book. It's one of those books that you just want to have on your bookshelf and use as a reference guide for, that you can pull back out years down the road and say, hey, I've completely forgot about that technique. I'm going to go ahead and give that a shot and see what happens. So either way, also, guys, just want to let you know that, again, I'm always available for questions. You can email me directly. I'm here to kind of act as your mentor. So if you have questions, you want to ask me directly, you can shoot me an email, kevin@kevinbupp.com, or you can actually go to my website, kevinbupp.com, and on the right-hand side, there's a button that says leave voicemail or send voicemail. It's a red button, and that will allow you to actually leave a voicemail directly from your computer. So if you have any questions whatsoever, you'd like to get my advice on it, it's just an opinion. I'm not an expert in all areas. In fact, there's a lot of areas I'm not an expert in, but I will do my best to help you out. And if I can't help you, I will refer you to someone that can. So I'd be more than happy to help you on your way to in your investing career. And last but not least, before we get on to the interview, just want to reiterate the goals of this podcast, which I've mentioned on other podcasts in the past. But my goal with this whole podcast is to bring you guys industry experts who are really making it happen in the commercial real estate investing space. I learn from each and every one of these interviews that I do. I learn something, so it's very beneficial for me, which I hope it's very beneficial for you as well. But I want to share with you these resources and these experts of our industry that, they're just chock full of great information. I mean, they've been through the school of hard knocks. They're out there making it happen each and every day. And hopefully they'll help you avoid, some of the same mistakes that I've made along the way, my investing career, and they'll, bring you some great information at the same time. And I want to act as your mentor and investment liaison who will listen and answer all your questions. So again, if you have questions at all, feel free to reach out to me. I'm available. I can make myself available, and I will. I had a mentor in this business when I got started, and I'd be more than happy to mentor any of you if you need help, free of charge, that is. But without further ado, let's move on to the interview with Charles Dobens. All right, guys, like I mentioned, today on the show, we're thrilled to be joined by multifamily investment and legal expert Charles Dobens. Charles started out dreaming, which most people don't, but started out dreaming of being a landlord as a little boy, not a firefighter, not a police officer, but he wanted to be a landlord as a little boy. But he took the typical academic path and went through the roles, went to Massachusetts School of Law, became a practicing attorney, which he is to this present day. He actually specializes in multifamily acquisitions and dispositions. But during that period of time, he actually got into the insurance business before going into real estate, and owned a successful benefits administration company for a number of years before deciding to make the switch into multifamily investing. And he, since that time, he successfully owned and operated more than $20 million worth of income producing properties and currently owns over 200 units with another 200 under contract to close. He's the founder of the Multifamily Investing Academy, which is an academy that provides training and resources for those looking to get started or move to the next level in multifamily investment niche. Charles, I'm sure I haven't done you full justice with your background or resume, so if you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes and tell our listeners a little bit more about your background and kind of how you got started in this crazy world of multifamily investing.
Sure. Thanks. I appreciate you having me on. It's funny that you say that, I've always wanted to own apartments ever since I was a little boy. And I like to say that my heroes growing up all played for the Red Sox. There was Carl Yastrzemski, Fred Lynn, and Sam Tamposi. And people look at me like, well, who's Sam Tamposi? Well, Sam Tamposi was one of the owners of the Red Sox, and he actually lived in my town where I grew up, and he was a friend of our family's, and he made his millions in real estate. And I watched this guy. He was the richest guy in New Hampshire, one of the nicest guys you could ever meet, and he made all his money in real estate. I thought, man, that's why I want to get into real estate. I just love seeing that type of thing and what it can do for you. So, like you said, I went through the process of college and business and went into the family business, took the path of least resistance, and then finally, after 20 years of that, said I hate my life. I hate what I do. I'm miserable. I don't want to do this for the next 20 years of my life. I've got to get out. My wife, God bless her, she said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to own apartment buildings. And she said, okay, fine, let's do it. And that's what started me off on going out there and acquiring property and building up a portfolio. And I'll tell you something, it has not all been a bed of roses. I mean, I've had great properties that I've owned, and I've had some real stinkers. And I am more than open to sharing my story, the good, the bad, and the ugly with everybody. And, that's, I think, what makes me kind of a unique attorney in this field, because not only do I own and operate multifamily, and I've been through so many transactions, I know exactly what it takes, but I can sit down and look at your numbers and tell you whether you're buying a good deal or not, and then help you through the transaction, either making it a better deal or telling you, hey, you don't want to be involved in this property, and your best bet is to walk away. So that kind of gives me a unique perspective on the business, both from a lawyer and as an investor.
Okay, great. So, so you've been doing this for about 10 years, or a little over 10 years now, correct? The real estate side of things?
Yeah, you can go back and say I bought my first income property back in 1988.
Can you go back to that first one? I loved it. There's new people in this call, and there's also some seasoned investors, but I always like to kind of start in the beginning and get a feel for where you started and kind of how you progressed, through the levels of multifamily. What was that first property like? How many units? And just give us the overall picture of what happened with that property.
Yeah, that will give you an idea as to how quickly you can get big in this business, and how what you think you're capable of doing, you're just scratching the surface. And here's what I mean. When I first started buying apartments, my objective in my first year was to own 20 units. That was my goal. So I got out there and I started looking for deals. And I started, contacting every broker, dialing for dollars. And I, spent 6 months looking and could not find anything good. And I finally sat down with this one broker, and she was a sweetheart of a lady. And she said, listen, I know what you're looking for, and I'm going to find it for you. But so when I call you back, you better have your checkbook ready to write that earnest money check, because you're going to do that deal. And I said, okay, fine, that sounds good to me. She called me back 2 weeks later and said, I found the deal. You got to come up and buy this one. And it was 128 units. And I was like, what the heck? Is she kidding me? It's 120 units. I can't buy 128 units. My goal this year was to buy 20. So we go up there and we look at this property, and let me tell you something. It is a really good property. The owner was in distress. He didn't know how to run it. He didn't know how to run a business, and he was about to be taken back by the bank. At the time, we didn't know that. So we go on this property and we look at it, 128 units. Wow, this is great. And we say, but you know what? That's biting off a little bit more than we can right now. Would it be possible that we kind of maybe peel off that side of the business of the property right now and just buy those? Would you sell us just those 40 over there? Because they were so separate and distinct from all the rest of them, it was easy to distinguish these from the rest of the property. And I said, yes, if you want, we will sell you these 40. Great, beautiful. So before we knew it, we had 40 on a contract, friends and family offering. We raised the money in 60 days, and we were off to the races. We bought our first property within 6 months of being in this business. It was a Class A cream puff property. I still own to this day. I love this property. It's so easy to own and operate. It's a great, great property. And then what happened was, after we bought the property, there were still 88 units left in this complex. And the bank came to us. The bank liked working with us. They liked our balance sheet, and they said, hey, would you like to buy these other 88? And I said, well, geez, I just kind of tapped out all my friends and family for all their money. I don't think I'm going to be able to raise, I would need a lot more money to buy these 88. And they said, how much more would you need? I said, I would need like $500,000 to buy this property. And they said, what if we lent you the $500,000? And I said, what do you mean? and said, we'll sell this, we're going to take this property back and we'll sell it to you and we'll lend you the down payment money. And I said, so what you're telling me is something I've heard about on those late night infomercials. You're trying to tell me that I can buy these 88 units with no money down? And they said, yeah, that's exactly what we're saying. And I said, hold on a second, let me ask my wife. And I remember pulling the phone in my chest and said, hey, hon, they want us to buy the other 88 with no money down, and they're going to lend us the money. And my wife says, how quickly can we close? And I said, my wife wants to know how quickly we can close. I said, in 2 weeks. I said, 2 weeks. She said, sold. So within 6 months, I ended up owning 128 units. Right from the very, my original goal was 20. In my first year, I'm at 128.
Oh my gosh!
You
what
never
an incredible
know.
story.
You never know. You have to be out there in the business. You have to be out there making offers. If you are not making offers, this is nothing more than a very expensive hobby.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be in the business doing something.
Wow, what an incredible opportunity that was.
Yeah, and I still own those properties today. They're great properties.
Being that it was an A-class property, most people that get into this business start looking at, the B and the C-class properties and sometimes D, hopefully not D because that's a scary war zone, drug-rid kind of stuff. But, A-class property that you got into for, well, I guess not no money down, but the second half you got into no money down. But, let's actually talk about that first half because I feel like that's such a major part of this business is pulling the funds together to make that first deal happen. Some people out there are lucky enough to have a decent balance sheet, maybe from a prior business, or they've got some savings to where, they've got the funds to put up for their first property. But some people don't, and they need to go raise the money, whether it's from friends or family or other investors. Can you give us an idea of, how much money you actually had to raise and what kind of terms and things of that nature?
Sure. And let me just tell you, folks listening in, when we start talking about raising private money, we're talking about the issuance of a security. That puts you into a body of law that you better know what you're doing. And my recommendation is always to find a good securities attorney who can walk you through that process. We have a securities attorney who's of counsel to our firm. That all my clients work with that person in order to have their documents drafted and everything done correctly. And I always, let me just put the warrior hat on here for a second, just so I can make sure that everybody understands this. Even if you're looking to raise money from your brother, I have people come to me and say, well, do I still need all of these documents? And the answer is, yes, you do, even if it's your brother that you're raising the money with. Well, geez, he's my brother. I don't need to go out and buy, have a private placement memorandum drafted up. And, I don't need to do any of that stuff. And the correct answer is, if you're issuing a security, then you need to have the proper documents drafted up. And it's not so much an issue with you and your brother. The issue is when it's not your brother anymore, but it's your brother's widow's next husband. Mm-hmm. And he wants his money out of the deal. That's when it becomes a problem because you didn't do it correctly the first time. So always make sure that you've done the securities work correctly. Now, in this particular case, what we did is we needed to raise about $600,000. Now, half of that money came from three people, myself, my father-in-law, and my brother-in-law. We raised $300,000 ourselves. So all we needed to do was raise an additional $300,000. And that took about 8 more investors. Between $25,000 and $100,000 a piece, we were able to raise $100,000. So it was looking back on it, that was a scary raise. Like, where the heck are we going to find $600,000? Today, that's an easy raise. And that's how you build up into this business. You start small and you start, I've done, $2.5 million raises. So that's you just make sure you do everything correctly. You document everything. If always act as if the SEC is looking over your shoulder and make sure you cross all your T's and dot all your I's.
Absolutely. Not to get too in depth with this question I'm about to ask, because we could probably talk for an entire hour just on this one topic, but in terms of raising money, you obviously put together a PPM. What type of process was that, putting together this PPM arrangement? I mean, is it a lengthy, expensive process, or is it, will the SEC attorneys walk you through it, and is it pretty boilerplate and easy to do?
I want to tell you, it's boilerplate. It is not. You have to know, and you have to sit down with a qualified security attorney who can talk to you about your options and what you need to do based upon those options. There are certain requirements with the SEC that you can only talk to accredited investors. And then sometimes if you're going to speak to non-accredited investors, you can only have up to 35 of them in your deal. So you really have to understand where your money is coming from, and also whether it's crossing state lines or not.
Sure.
So you really want to sit down with someone, a qualified attorney who can walk you through that particular aspect of it. The documents that you need would be the private placement memorandum, we call it the PPM. It would be the subscription agreement, which everybody needs to sign off on. You need an operating agreement for the company that they're all buying into. You need an accredited investor questionnaire. So these are all the documents that you need to have ready to go. And, I'll tell you something, Kevin. I don't want to scare people away. I always say that this business is the best business in the world to be in. But there are barriers to entry. And the barriers to entry, in my opinion, are nothing more than hoops that everybody is throwing up in your face as you go to the closing line. And you just have to jump through all the hoops. And that's all we're talking about right here. The accredited investor form, the PPM, the subscription agreement. So what? They're just hoops you have to jump through to get to that property.
Very true.
So
very true.
Just look at it that way.
Yep, very true. That's a very good point. So, and that brings up my next question, which is there's obviously a ton of other types of commercial assets that you could have chose to invest in. That you've got retail centers, you've got self-storage, you've got office buildings, industrial plazas. Why multifamily? Why not? I mean, have you expanded your portfolio, or do you solely focus on multifamily properties, and why?
I may not be the brightest bulb in the tree, but I only understand multifamily. I get it. I understand the business of multifamily. It makes total sense to me. I can look at a multifamily property, and just by looking at the outside, I know what's going on the inside and what it's like to own and operate that property. I drive by a strip plaza, a strip mall. They give me the hives. I don't get it. They just, I can't figure out the market, who your customers are for that type of a business. That whole concept, I just could never get my hands around. Multifamily was very easy to me. And,
I agree with you. Everyone needs a place to live.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know the economics of that place to live. It makes total sense to me. And, and there is nothing I haven't seen in this business. No one has been able to throw me a curveball yet about multifamily, because it's so logical and it just makes total sense. Retail, I don't understand the market. I don't understand the cap rates. I don't understand who your customers really are. That whole business, it doesn't do it for me. I like to use the example, and this is one. People talk about, self-storage or multifamily, and they think that, jumping from one to the other is an easy thing to do. That's fine. Okay, if you think that's the case, then, good luck to you. I haven't been able to figure that out yet. And I used the example. I was on one of my properties in Texas on a Sunday morning, and it was 110 degrees out, and the office phone rings. Now, on a Sunday morning, I should never have answered the phone, but I picked up the phone, and it was one of the residents just screaming at me. You better get somebody up here to fix this air conditioner. It's 110 degrees and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to sue you. And I'm like, okay, don't worry about it. We'll get right over there. We'll take care of it. So I get my maintenance guy who lives in the property. We jump in the truck, and we drive down to a self-storage facility. And we kept all of our refrigerators and all of our air conditioners on off property. Mm-hmm. We drive onto this property on a Sunday morning, and it is absolutely pristine. It is clean. It is quiet. There's nobody there. And I turned to my maintenance guy and I said, I bet the owner of this property does not get a phone call that someone's air conditioner went out on a Sunday morning. And he said, yeah, I think you're right, because it's such a different business. But the thing is, that guy's only collecting $50 a month from me. The other guy's paying me $700 a month. So there's a big disparity in the revenue.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
So, yeah, it's
So multifamily is it. I mean, it's funny because I feel the same way with you start talking about retail, and then you have to all the variables. One big variable with retail is the internet. I mean, you got Amazon that is taking over the world, just like Google took over the world, and that's scary. That's got to be scary for brick and mortar type businesses that occupy these retail type centers. Same with the offices. You got a lot of large companies that are telecommuting now, and my wife's actually one of them. She works for an organization that has 4,000 employees, and 90% of them telecommute. So they used to be in 40,000 square feet, and now their business is in 5,000 square feet. So that's scary. Those big switches make a big difference on your balance sheet when you own that property. So,
yeah. But the other thing too is understanding the economics of these businesses. Like I said, I don't understand offices. I don't understand retail. I had a situation where somebody came to me with a bank-owned self-storage, and they asked me, "Do I want to buy it?" And I'm like, "Well, geez, I don't know. It's not really in the market that I'm looking for, but I was thinking maybe I can wholesale this deal." And so I found a guy on LinkedIn, and this guy is a lawyer out of Little Rock, Arkansas, and he doesn't practice anymore. But he owns, I think, 4,000 or 40,000 self-storage units around the country. This guy, was representing clients who own self-storage. And he said, I'm going to get into this business myself. And he went out and he started buying self-storage, and now he owns a ton. So I sent this guy the information on this particular property. I said, here's what the bank's looking for. What do you think? He calls me back 2 days later, and he tells me verbatim everything that's going on this property. He told me about rent increases. He told me about problems that the owner was having. He told me why the owner was in trouble. And I said, I can't remember his name. I was calling Joe. I said, Joe, do you know this guy? Like, how do you know all this about the property? He goes, oh, no, I know this business. I could tell just by looking at the financials exactly what's happening on this property. And then he said, am I right? I said, you just described exactly what's going on this property. He goes, yeah, they're all the same. And it dawned on me, I said, that guy knows self-storage the same way that I know apartments. Mm-hmm. I can look at an apartment building, look at the financials, and I can tell you exactly what's going on in that property. And people are amazed at it, but you know what? When you're in this business and you become an expert in this business, that's what it's like.
Interesting. So, become an expert in your niche. Your niche is multifamily. Become an expert in that niche and stay focused on that niche. Because there's plenty of money to make in that niche. There's no need to go other places, other asset classes. So I completely agree. Well, so one of the important things of finding, so the next step is, finding that right deal. And one of the most important steps of getting into a good deal is performing proper due diligence. That is the most important step before closing on a property, is doing the proper due diligence, making sure there's no hidden skeletons in the closet. And you've got a unique, you got this video series on your website called The 5 Horror Stories of Multifamily Due Diligence and How to Prevent Them. What are those 5 horror stories? I'd love to hear them if you could just touch on those, because that was intriguing. That title alone is intriguing, and I'm sure the people on this call love to hear what things they need to avoid, when going into due diligence on a property.
Okay, all right. In the issue of full disclosure here, I wrote that video like years ago, and I can't remember what the 5 things are. Oh. But for my mentorship group last night, I did a intro to due diligence for all of my mentorship students. And then I do twice a year, I do a seminar. This year it's going to be once in Anaheim, California, and the other one's going to be in Denver, Colorado, on a weekend, strictly on multifamily due diligence. And, I tell you, I am an expert at multifamily due diligence. This is where the deals get made or the deals get killed. And, I have so many tricks and techniques on due diligence. Let me kind of just run through a couple of scenarios. I mean, one horror story is phantom tenants. And you think to yourself, well, what do you mean? And here's a case where, the property, all during the acquisition phase, all during the due diligence process, the property was being reported back to the new buyers as being 97% occupied. And the new buyers are like, oh, my gosh, this is going to be fantastic. We're going to make so much money on this property. This is going to be great. And they get in there and they buy the property, and 30 days later, the occupancy is 55%. And during that 30-day period, not one moving van ever moved up. And so the property management company tells the owner, and the new owner is calling up and saying, hey, go knock on doors, go get my rent, and these people have to know that they still have to pay. And the property management company says, no, there's nobody there. What do you mean there's nobody there? There's supposed to be 97% occupancy. And the property management company says, no, I have never seen such a case of leasing fraud in my life. Now, you can't just call something fraud. You've got to be able to back it up. And they say, hey, how can you prove that? He says, oh, I can prove it. So how can you prove it? He goes, here, take a look at these leases. I said, okay, fine. What am I looking for? Look at the name of the property on the lease. Okay, well, what's the name? What's this property? Well, we don't know. Well, what's the name of this property? Well, we don't know. About 8 leases had the names of another complex that the owner, the seller, still owns. Mm. And the remaining leases were whited out and photocopied over.
Oh, boy.
So what this guy was doing was he was taking leases from other properties and whiting out the names of the property and sticking them in, saying the property was 97% occupied. That is a horror story of due diligence, and there are ways to protect it. Yeah, and there are ways to protect against it, and you just have to know how to do that.
Well, what do you do in that situation? I mean, during your due diligence, would you actually go and do a walkthrough of each unit? Is that one way that you would, uncover something like this?
Yeah. Now, the thing is that everybody thinks, well, I'll just make sure that in the inspection period, I get to walk through every single unit. Okay, that's fine. Everybody does that. That's no big deal. You look around and you say, okay, you check it out. But the thing that you have to do and you have to protect against is you have to make sure that in your purchase and sale agreement, you make sure that you can do an inspection at any time that the property is under contract. Not just during the first 30 days, because it could take 5 months to close. If it's an assumption deal, it could take 5 months to close. And during those 5 months, if you don't have that right to be able to walk back on that property and check it out, then you're screwed. And this guy can be moving people out and you'll never know. And so you always want to make sure that you can check any time that you're under contract. And 2 days before you close, you're going to go do an inspection. And you're going to take the rent roll with you. And you're going to walk every single unit. And you're going to make sure those people that are on the rent roll still live there. And I'll tell you, the thing is, when you walk into a unit where the person has skipped, that's where somebody is just in the dead of night, they just up and left, I've been in this business long enough that when you walk into an apartment where somebody has skipped, you can take one look at the place and this person's not coming back. Right. This unit's skipped. Where are they on the rent? They're behind on the rent. Have you evicted yet? No, we haven't started the eviction proceeding. Wait a minute, they're 2 months behind on the rent. Why haven't you started to evict them? They haven't started to evict them because they don't want you to know that this person is no longer
right.
All these types of things. This is what we talk about in the due diligence seminar weekend. We'll go through all of this stuff.
Yeah, that's a deal. I mean, that's scary. There's probably people in this call right now that they're scared crapless right now because of that story, because that would wipe someone's entire life savings out if they didn't go through that last step and do a final inspection and realize that instead of this property thinking that it's going to be 95% occupied, it's really only 80% occupied. And Gosh, what a nightmare.
Yep,
what a
that
nightmare.
property never recovered from that. And I'll tell you, I can sit here and I, as the attorney, I always tell you the worst case scenario, and I want you to know what the worst case scenario is. But there are ways to protect yourself from that costing you. And, you just have to know what you're doing. That's it.
Right.
And that's what we do here is we make sure our clients are protected. Our clients and our students are protected.
Okay. Well, Charles, you talked about that first deal you did. That was an A-class property. I mean, I think you primarily look at value-add type properties, but what are your favorite types? I mean, are you still going after like those B properties that are in A areas and trying to, get them up to close to A rents? Or are you going after C-type properties? There's A, B, C, D type classes, but what is your favorite and why? Okay,
my favorite is a B-class property and just a solid performing asset. And the reason is because I practice law. I have my consulting practice. That is my full-time gig, as much as you want to call it full-time. This is where I make great money at this, and my multifamily ownership goes towards building up my portfolio so I can retire very, very nicely down in Charleston, South Carolina someday. So I want to make sure that these properties are not eating me alive. When you own a multifamily property, it changes your life. And you always have to understand how will owning this particular property change my life. A C-class property could eat you alive. I always joke, I have a bumper sticker on my car that says, life is too short to own C-class property. And the thing is, I'm 49 years old. I'm not looking to get out there with a tool belt and have to reposition the property. That's not my focus. So I look for performing assets. And typically, I talk about this in my classes. Here's my elevator speech to brokers. I'm looking for B-class assets. I'm looking for properties with 150 or more units that were built in the 1980s or newer with pitched roofs, individually metered, separate entrances, and some type of a management problem that I can get in there and fix. And that is it. That rolls off my tongue. When I speak to a broker, that's what I'm looking for. And I don't talk about cash and cash return. I don't even talk cap rate. That's all I say to the guy. And I wait for him to come back with some deals that meet that criteria. And so, A-class property is too rich for my blood. C-class property, you know what? People can make good money at it. They can operate it well, but it's not for me. B-class is a good, solid assets case. The people that we talk to about investing in the deals, they're not looking for risky deals. A B-quality asset is the right one to buy.
Okay.
So those are, and they're out there. I have a client who's about to go on a contract right now with an 89-unit property, and he's it is a cream puff. This thing is gorgeous. I would love to own this property. So they're out there. You just have to look for them all the time.
And he found that through a broker, your client?
Yeah. It took him a while, and so he finally. It was interesting because I've been working with him for quite a while. We actually were helping him with his management company, and he came to my seminar, a Shark Tank in Atlanta last month, and he said on the ride home he got a phone call from a broker, and he went up and looked at it and said, "I'm buying it," and the numbers made sense, and the deal was perfect, and now we're about to put it under contract.
Interesting. Okay, so there's deals out there. I mean, there are deals to be had.
Oh, yeah.
Love this content? Want to avoid the most common mistakes that most investors make when they're looking to get into multifamily investing? Download our free guide to the 7 habits of highly successful multifamily investors by visiting kevinbupp.com/guide today. All right, let's get back to the show.
Yeah.
So I know when you speak to a broker about what you're looking for, you don't talk about cap rates or cash on cash or anything like that. But I'm assuming you do have a target investment strategy that you go in with. I mean, mentally, you know what you want to buy at and what you want to groom that property to. I mean, can you speak a little bit more to that? I mean, do you try to buy at a 10 cap with the ability to possibly groom it to a 14 cap in 12 months? Or what is your strategy, your personal investment strategy?
Well, my personal investment strategy is to own a property that doesn't eat me alive. I just want to get in there and buy the property correctly. And when I say about buying the property correctly, that's not a no money down deal. You know, I talk about that deal that I did, the first deal, the 40 unit, not 88 unit. The 40 unit, I put 20% down on 40 units. The 88 unit, I put 0 money down. Okay? Property, do you think I make more money on every month? I make more money on the 40 unit because I financed it correctly. It's got the proper amount of leverage on it. And from a business perspective, that property was purchased correctly. Mm-hmm. So I'm not looking to go out there and, do all no money down deals. I'm looking for quality assets that meet my investment criteria of not eating me alive. And, as far as the cap rate goes, I never mention cap rate to a broker when I'm telling him what type of property I'm looking for, because I don't want to limit what he shows me. Based upon the market, or whatever market I'm looking in, that criteria that I just described to you would mean a particular type of cap rate. Mm-hmm. It's typically 7-8 cap. If he shows me a deal that meets that criteria and it's a 12 cap or 11 cap, I know there's something wrong there. There's definitely something wrong. So I want to find out more about that deal, but he wouldn't have shown that deal to me if I had limited myself on the cap rate.
Right. And what I found in the past is that there are some deals. In fact, I've looked at some mobile home park deals in the past where, the brokers advertise. I'm not going to name the name of the brokerage firm, but, one of the big brokerage firms out there that deal a lot with pro forma numbers and just, their marketing packages are they're marketing packages. And one came across me, and a lot of times I don't even look at them. A lot of times I just breeze through them. I'm like, this is kind of a joke. This is a joke. This is not really how this thing would operate or what it would cost to operate it.
Exactly.
Once you put real numbers in, this makes no sense whatsoever. And it's really not that 10 cap they're selling. It's more like a 4 cap. But, what I've seen a few times, you get some unsophisticated brokers out there, and let's say it's a property that should be operating on a 50% expense ratio, and this one, for instance, was a mobile home park. It was, I believe it was like 150 units, but it was losing money. It was 90% occupied, and it was losing money each and every month. And the reason why is there was a management fee, and the management fee should have been about $24,000 a year. It was over $100,000 a year, the management fee. So he was basing his cap rate. He was advertising, I think it was like a 7 cap, which wouldn't have been attractive. But once you got in there and really started looking at what the expenses were, he didn't go through and say, well, here's what's wrong with it. Here's what you could do immediately. You could cut this management fee. He just didn't know. He didn't know what it should be running at. And so it was actually really more along the lines of like a 14 cap based on what they had it priced at. So that happens every once in a while. You get an unsophisticated broker that just really doesn't understand how to market a property or what the operations really should be, and probably few and far between, but that can happen. So that's why you shouldn't really care about cap rate. In that case, did you make an offer at the asking price, or did you actually try to negotiate them down? Someone that was shown to me by someone that was looking at the property, and they wanted my input on it, and they ended up doing the deal, and they didn't need anyone to get involved in it. So it was a deal that didn't come to me right out of the gate. It was shown to me by another individual, and I would love to have partnered on that deal, but it didn't happen. So he still owns it today, and he is kicking butt with it. So
that's great.
That's one of those things. Performing well.
So you come back, you give him a price offer, and the broker must think to himself, man, did I screw up somewhere? The guy doesn't want to negotiate the price. I must have screwed up somewhere.
That's exactly what he did. He paid full price for it. Closed within. I think he ended up paying cash for it. Closed in like 20 days. I mean, did some very quick due diligence, but knew it was just. I mean, it was a great deal. Had city water, city sewer, had great infrastructure. Was in a great metropolitan market, and so I mean, it was just they don't come along that often, but that can happen. So we're actually working on a deal right now with a broker up in I hope he doesn't listen to this podcast, but there's a mobile home park we have under contract right now. It's a small one, 35 spaces, and I tell people listening to this podcast that, typically LoopNet is kind of the trash can for the deals that didn't get picked up by the broker's serious buyers. And that's normally what happens. I still sift through there. I have some alerts set on there that, when a new deal comes on LoopNet, it sends it to me. And most of the time I just hit delete. But this is a deal, it's 35 units, but it's a residential broker that has it listed, and he typically his primary market are like $40,000 to $80,000 single family homes. Knows nothing about commercial property, let alone mobile home parks, which is a completely different animal on its own. And this is a park that was bank owned. They gave it to him to list, and he had no marketing material whatsoever on LoopNet on the advertisement. I mean, it didn't say anything. It didn't see how many trailers were included with the sale. It didn't say what the occupancy was. It didn't have any financial information. I mean, most people just probably passed over it and wouldn't call. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to call. Why not? I pick up the phone just to even build a relationship with this guy, and I got talking to him, and I found out that it's a unique situation. It was an older park that the infrastructure was redone about 8 years ago. The bank had lent $1.3 million on it about 5 years ago. The guy brought in a whole bunch of newer trailers, 29 trailers from Katrina. He went and bought repos from the government, or not repos, but government homes from the Katrina hurricane. And so it's got all late model, 2005 or newer, single-wide manufactured homes in it. Infrastructure was brand new because the city made them redo the infrastructure. But the banks had it, so the occupancy was basically non-existent. But we went back and forth, and we got this thing under contract now, and we're due to close in a few weeks. We got under contract for $200,000, whereas 5 years ago there was 1.3, which is irrelevant because it was never worth that. But either way, if he would have actually advertised, I mean, the wholesale cost of the trailers alone, we could literally just take the trailers, minus the infrastructure and anything else, and just sell those trailers on the wholesale market to other mobile home parks, and there's about $300,000 worth of value just in the trailers alone, in the condition that they're in. So, it's a great deal, and but that's just an example of brokers not necessarily doing their job in terms of putting together a realistic marketing package and real information regarding the property, or knowing exactly even what the property is or how it should be operating. But either way, so there are deals.
Let me talk about two things you mentioned. First off, you were able to pull that deal together because you had specific knowledge of the mobile home market. I know nothing about mobile homes. I was involved in it once. I had two clients that were involved in mobile home investing, and they taught me more about it. And I came to the realization that is an entirely foreign market to me that I don't understand. So I don't even get involved in mobile home opportunities. So if that thing appeared on LoopNet, it never would have crossed my threshold because I stay away from it. But look at you. You turned it into gold. And
well, it will be gold. It's not gold yet, but it will be gold. We're paying $2 for it. It's going to take about $100,000 of rehab in the units, and it should be a pretty quick lease-up process. There's a high demand for affordable housing in that market. And it's Atlanta metro area, so it's a great area. And we'll probably it's got a couple empty spaces. We'll bring some used trailers in, probably something about $40,000 on used trailers, and it should once we have it stabilized, like 6 to 7 months to get it fully stabilized, it should probably be valued on conservative basis on a 10 cap value of about $900,000. So it should be a pretty good play. Yeah, and it's something we'll hold. It's something we'll hold, and it's surrounded by new development. I mean, there's a brand new townhome community that was built 4 years ago that touches this property. I mean, it's in the path of progress. So. And the great thing the thing that we like about mobile home parks is that there's a barrier to entry because most cities and local governments will not allow them give out the permits for these things to be built, and not many have been built over the past 10 years, and they're only going away because developers are buying them for higher and better use and tearing them down, putting up shopping centers, and so it's a unique business, but it is a different animal, that's for sure. It's different than apartments, but.
And then you talk about LoopNet, and, I talk quite a bit about LoopNet in my seminars, and the first thing I say is that LoopNet is where deals go to die, which is pretty much what you just said. I mean, if it made it to LoopNet, it means that it couldn't have been sold by any of the broker's A-list clients. Mm-hmm. They didn't want to touch this thing, and it ends up on LoopNet. Now, LoopNet's got some great ways, like you mentioned, the alerts. And there are other ways to find deals on LoopNet or find brokers on LoopNet that are doing deals in the marketplaces you're looking for. But overall, you have to understand how LoopNet works. And I think you just gave a perfect example. I was speaking to a broker in Dallas years back, and I said, how does LoopNet work for you? And he goes, okay, well, let me tell you. If we put a new property out on LoopNet, within 3 days, we will receive 1,700 requests for additional information.
Boy.
And that's very easy to do. You know how easy that is on LoopNet. You just hit that little button that says, please send me more info, and it's automatic. So he says, I get 1,700 requests. He says, out of that 1,700, I get about 20 to 25 phone calls for additional information on the property. So right away you go from 1,700 tire kickers down to 25 people that have actually looked at the material that you sent them and have further questions. Mm-hmm. And out of that 25, he says, I get between 3 and 5 offers, and we sell it to one person. And so that is how a typical life cycle is for a deal on LoopNet. Now you think about it, if you're the guy that ends up being the guy who buys that property, there are two ways to look at that. One of them is that you were able to outlast 1,700 other investors and you got that property. Or the flip side is 1,700 other people looked at that deal and passed, and you ended up with it. Either way, it just doesn't, bode well for whether you truly got yourself a deal on LoopNet or not. That's not what you find on LoopNet.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, I've actually used LoopNet from the other side. I'm not a licensed broker, but we've actually wholesaled a few properties on LoopNet and had some great successes with it, an apartment facility. So, it's a valuable tool, but you have to know how to use it.
Oh, yeah. When I go to sell my properties, absolutely, I'm using LoopNet.
Yeah,
no doubt about it.
Just don't burn up 8 hours a day for days in a row sifting through deals on there. I mean, you can, but you're better off setting your alerts for what you have an interest in and waiting for the alerts to come and to sift them through in that way and make you pick up the phone, introduce yourself to brokers, go invite them to lunch or a coffee, and just build a relationship. And they know what the deals are in the market. They farm their local areas or they the target markets that they are active in, and they'll be the ones that bring you the deals because they've already built the relationships with the property owners. They know what's going on in the market, and they're the gold mine. I mean, those are the people that bring you the great deals. But so there was an interesting white paper I saw on your website, and I didn't have the opportunity to read it, but I guess you wrote it about 2 years ago, and I think it was 2011. It's called Multifamily Acquisition Strategies for the New Economy. What have you seen that has changed, let's say, since the crash in 2005, 2006? Well, a little bit later for commercial real estate. But what have you seen that has changed in terms of acquisition strategies, and how can our listeners apply what you teach in this white paper?
There are deals still to be had. There are still deals coming back. Let me just kind of give you an overview of what the white paper talked about, and then how that's occurring in today's market. Basically, what we were talking about in the white paper was the meltdown, and what that meltdown meant to people who were still owner-operators of property after the meltdown. So you've got these people that purchased apartment complexes back in 2005. Back in 2002, and they bought it at a great time in the market when the market was still going up, and they went out there and got commercial mortgage-backed security loans, great deals, lower interest rate. Everything was fantastic about it. They did it correctly. They didn't do anything wrong, and for the next 10 years, they have run their properties perfectly. They've never missed a mortgage payment. All the bills are paid every month. They're spitting off a nice return every single quarter. And these are great assets. But the problem that happened was during that meltdown, values dropped. Through no fault of their own. The NOI remained the same, but the cap rate went up on them. And so what happened was, when that occurred, the values of their properties went down. Now, the problem is today, those notes are coming due. And they're with commercial mortgage-backed securities. They're with the big Wall Street firms. There's no chance for them to rewrite the notes. There aren't any notes to rewrite. They're securities. And so all of a sudden, you've got these guys who have, this is their retirement money. They plowed the money into this property for years, and now, it's time to either refinance or sell. But the value of the property isn't there, and so they can't refinance. If they have to refinance, they've got to put more money back into the property at a time when they were looking to take their money out.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're seeing a lot of these properties are going back to the bank. They're going back to the special servicers. And the special servicers are taking them over and then just unloading them. And they're great properties. And so, what we teach in our class on how to find these deals, we show you all the different websites, all the different players for as far as the special services go. But the key thing that you have to understand is that in those types of cases, because these properties are with special servicers, you're not going to be able to make your typical arm's length offer on the deal. You've got to be prepared to move very quickly, and you've got to be prepared to have cash available to you to make the deals happen. And so that's part of the other process that we teach is if you're making deals on these types of properties, you also have to have the resources behind you to make those deals close the way that they're supposed to. So, our mentorship students, we provide them with earnest money deposit funds. We provide them with key sponsors for certain deals. We introduce them to people who are qualified key sponsors so that they can get the deals done, so that we can remove all the hoops that are in people's way to get deals done. We make sure that our clients, our students, can get deals done. That's our key. We're all about making sure the deals get done and deals get done correctly. So that white paper, there's a great, you can download it. It's on the website. And if the first half of it, I'll tell you, is a pretty technical document. Second half is more of a narrative as to what's going on. And there's actually one page in there. If you just want the Cliff Notes version of that white paper is one page talking about John the investor. Just go to that one page. It's actually shaded differently than the rest of the book. And it talks about John the investor. You'll read that page and you'll understand what I'm talking about.
Interesting. So you bring up a good point about, where these deals are at and them not, being able to get, terms are coming due, they're not being able to get new financing on due to values dropping. Do you find that wave has primarily made its way through? Do you feel like there's another wave of these foreclosures that are going to be coming to the market or that are already coming to the market right now?
I think the wave is slowing down. It's not the tsunami that was going on around 2009, 2010. Things are starting to get more stable, but more importantly, banks are learning how to deal with these types of problems differently. At the time, the banks didn't know what to do. Now we're seeing banks getting a little bit more creative with solutions to these problems. Like, for instance, an A/B note. They'll start to write A/B notes on properties. That means that if you owe $1 million on a property, but the appraisal comes back that the property is worth $900,000, and the bank examiner says you got to have an 80% LTV. Well, that means that you have to have collateral of $720,000 on that property, or the first note, the A note, has to be only worth $720,000. So what the banks are now doing is they're saying, okay, you owe us $1 million. The bank examiner says we can only lend you $720,000 on this deal. So we're going to write the first mortgage on this property at $720,000. So the bank examiner is now off our back. Well, what do we do with that remaining $280,000 debt? We're going to call that a B note, and we're going to carve it out, and we're going to put it on the back end, and we're going to kind of hide it, and it's not going to be secured by this property, but, you still owe it to us. And so the bank qualifies, for the bank examiner requirements, and, everybody's happy. And so we're seeing a lot of those types of scenarios being played out across the marketplace. So banks are getting a little bit more creative. They're not taking back these properties. They're really working more with the owners to get things done, because there was a flood of properties hitting the market that just, they were great properties. If you had the cash, you could go out there and buy them and really make a killing.
Right.
And now that's slowed down quite a bit.
Cash is king in those kind of markets, that's for sure.
Yes, it always is.
Well, Charles, tell me a little bit about another important thing I wanted to discuss today is your management style and how, some people prefer to, create their own management company, keep kind of things in-house. Some people prefer to outsource it to a third-party management company. What's your style? What do you do?
Well, when I first started, I kind of drank the Kool-Aid of this concept of just, hiring a third-party management company, getting out there and letting them run it. And You know, you think about it over time, and as you become a little bit more proficient in this business, the concept of a third-party management company, the business model doesn't make any sense. Now, when you're looking at A-class property, institutional-grade property, property that's owned by an insurance company or owned by, a REIT, having a high-quality third-party management company makes sense. And there's a lot of money on that property to solve problems. And the property doesn't really have many problems because it's a brand spanking new A-class property. So it's very easy to manage. So in those scenarios, property management is easy. When you start getting down to B and C-class properties, property management becomes very labor intensive. It becomes very hard. And the profit model for a third-party management company in those scenarios doesn't make sense. I mean, just think about it this way. You pay a property management company, using round numbers, we'll say 5% of the collected rents, okay? Mm-hmm. So you pay them 5%, and your gross collected rents in a particular month is $100,000. Mm-hmm. And in 1 month, 2 months, you lose 20% of your vacancy, of your occupancy. It drops 20%. And you might be sitting there thinking to yourself, oh, that'll never happen. You know what, folks? It happens. Things go wrong on properties. Arson occurs on properties, and people move out. The seasons change, and if you have a very transient workforce in your complex, people could move out. You could lose that many people in a short period of time. So if you lost 20% of the $100,000, how much money would you lose?
Yeah, a lot. $20,000.
$20,000, exactly. How much would they lose? They would lose 1,000. You lose 20, and they lose 1. And you're screaming to yourself, I need to build that back up. Well, how hard are they going to work to get you your $20,000 back when they are only going to earn an extra $1,000?
Right, that's not a very valuable carrot to be dangling.
It isn't, exactly. So the whole concept of third-party management, to me, it just doesn't make sense from a cost benefits analysis. So what happened with me is I got very, very lucky. In my town, there's a guy who is a CPA, and we became friends. Our kids were on the same football teams and what have you. And he said, and he was a real estate investor as well. He says, listen, there's a huge need out in the marketplace for property management accounting done correctly. And I said, man, you're not kidding here, because every single property management company I ever used, it would cost me an extra $6,000 a year for my tax accountant just to clean up the book so I could present it to my investors, And so he says, I'm going to go out there and do this. And I said, well, how are you going to get paid? He goes, well, typical property management fee is 4%. I'm going to charge 1%. So you go to your property management company and say, you don't have to handle any of the financials. I've got a CPA that does that, so I want you to charge me 3%. The property management company says, sure, we'll do that. And so I hired this CPA to do all of the property management, all the financial management on my properties for the same amount of money as I was paying the property management company to do it. And let me tell you, Kevin, what happened was within a very short period of time, he was able to show me how I was getting screwed by my property management companies. And so from that point on, I fired all my property management companies. He handles my financials. He handles the Yardi system, my property management system, and the employees on the property all are my employees. They all report to me, and I manage the properties myself. And it has been the best move I've ever made.
At what point in time does that not become scalable, though? You being one person, even though he's handling the financials, which is the beefy part of it, but when does it not become scalable for you as an individual to really have all those apartment managers report to you, and you handle the marketing and all that process? I mean, it seems very, very overwhelming once you start talking thousands of units.
Well, it all gets back to what I was talking about as to the quality of the asset. C-class properties will eat you alive. The gotcha. A-class properties, you forget you even own. And so if you own good quality assets that don't require a whole lot of heavy management, the scalability is different than it is for if you're dealing with a C-class property that requires, you're constantly babysitting that property. So because I am not a full-time, property manager, overseeing the company, I have to make sure that I'm dealing with good quality assets that are not going to, eat up my time.
Right.
So,
right.
And the thing is, I got to tell you, I got great people working for me. I haven't always had great people,
That's
but
great.
I do now. Yep.
Hard to find, so when you get them, you got to hold on to them.
Yep.
Make them happy. So you're talking about retirement. Your goal is to build up this portfolio so you can retire comfortably in Charleston, South Carolina, which I think sounds like an amazing plan. But I mean, there's a lot of investors that have different, there are different goals with their portfolio. Some are, some know that, the market runs in cycles and they don't want to be caught in the down cycle. So they buy, they hold for, a certain period of time, then they sell before that particular market goes down. Are you worried about that? I mean, is your long-term strategy to hold these things and just keep them as an annuity, long-term retirement income?
Okay, great question. But, what you have to understand is that I'm in the multifamily business. And so I am constantly looking at multifamily property day in and day out. And when I look at a property that intrigues me, my first question is, what do I want to do with this property? Am I looking to wholesale the deal? Am I looking to flip it? Do I know somebody that I could turn around and dump it to? Or do I want to add this property to my portfolio? So I'm always asked that question first. What's my goal? What's my strategy on this particular property? And, that determines what I'm going to do with that asset. Now, that asset might be, these 8 properties that I own. I mean, I want my kids to have these properties. These
Sure.
things are beautiful. It'll be great if they took these things over. And so, that might be part of the strategy that we have. We're about to pick up another 200 units, and the whole concept behind those 200 units is to liquidate them slowly, and they're in different small parcels, is to liquidate them quickly, over the next 2 to 3 years, and then take that profit and plow it back into another complex.
Right.
So
right.
everyone is different.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, fair enough. Well, so, I mean, you sound like you have a ton of awesome training programs and resources that you offer. I love the Shark Tank idea. I mean, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I didn't know you offered that. That sounds amazing. But can you share with us a few success stories from past students? I mean, like, deal types, kind of what their background was before getting involved in multifamily, just maybe one or two, and just, tell us exactly how it went and where they're at today.
Yeah, okay. I've got one client, nicest guy in the world. He was investing with his father. The two of them, this guy always wanted to own apartments, and his dad, was winding down his business, so the two of them started working together. And, these guys are Midwestern guys, and that to me means they're slow and steady. Nothing gets them wound up. Everything, it took them a year to find their first deal. But
I thought that's what people said about us Southerners.
No, yeah, for a different reason, though.
Yeah, right.
When they were talking slow, it was a different reason, Kevin.
Right.
Yeah.
Touche.
So, yeah, sorry. So it took them a year to find the right deal, but when they did, it was the right deal. It made total sense. And they bought that first property. I think it was about a 40-unit property. They still own it to this day, but they were able to get that property repositioned and refinance it and pull out $500,000. Now, you might think to yourself, hey, payday, we just made $500,000. Well, not with these guys. Right away, they're out there looking for another property that meets the criteria that they're looking for. They found a 72-unit complex in the same geographical area, which is their backyard. It wasn't this concept of running in different parts of the country looking for emerging markets. This was in their backyard. And they went out there and they found a 72-unit that was, they got it from word of mouth. And that's what happens when you get into this business, is deals start to fall into your lap because people know you're in this business. Mm-hmm. And so, you start to see a lot more good opportunities. So these guys got the 72-unit. They took the $500,000 from the other deal and they plowed it into this one. So now they own 122 units, all from that, no additional funding. And this one they're repositioning, and when they reposition this one, they can refinance it. His plan and his strategy, and the guy's always been right, is to be able to refinance it at the end of the first year and pull out $1 million, and then he'll go out and buy another one. And I'll tell you something, Kevin, in 10 years, this guy is going to be worth millions because he took it slow and steady.
That's it. Slow and steady wins the race.
Exactly. Yeah, this guy is I love working with this guy because he's so smart about the decisions. And then I have another woman, probably, about 50 years old. She's a single mother. She lives in the Richmond, Virginia area. She's got a big position at, I believe, IBM. And so that's where her money's coming in, but she's looking to build a portfolio so she can get out of that rat race someday and fall back on it. And her mother was a single mother, too. Her mother invested in real estate all those years and has done very well and lives very comfortably now, and she wants to do the same thing. So she took about a year as well to find her deal, and we looked at a ton of deals. And, I'll tell you, she would fall in love with the deal and then fall out of love with it when she started looking at the numbers if it didn't meet what she wanted. And that's exactly what you have to do. If it's not going to work for you, you just got to walk away. And so she finally found this one deal, 6 units, okay? 6 units. But the problem is it's in Alexandria, Virginia, so it actually 6 units cost as much as the guy spent on the 72 units out in the Midwest, So, but it was a fractured condo deal. The guy had tried to turn them into condos. It was an old historic building, tried to turn them into condos 7 years ago. It didn't work out. So he, turned them into rental units, and now she owns these 6 units that she can turn condo if she wants, or she's just going to run them as apartments. And, she and her mother came up with money to buy that property themselves. So the two of them own those properties themselves.
Okay. Fantastic.
And let me tell you, when you were talking about syndication, part of the money that the first investor needed to buy that second deal, he had to syndicate. And he found a group of investors that all they wanted was 8% return.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Now, think about it. What I'm saying is 8% return on their money, 5 years. No appreciation, no ownership of the asset. So essentially, they got a note. Yeah.
Wow.
So these guys kept 100% ownership of the property and just paid out the first 8% to their cash investors.
Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. You don't have to give away a piece of the pie.
Exactly.
And that's a good point because there's a lot of IRA money out there. There's a lot of the baby boomers that have significant funds in their IRA accounts and. They're getting 1%, 2%, 3%. Maybe their financial advisor is doing a little bit better than that for them. Probably not, but they've got this money sitting there, and they haven't always dreamt of playing an active or an equity role in a real estate deal. But if they knew that they could actually get 8%, 9%, 10%, secured return on their money based on the real estate, not having an equity position, just straight interest. They would be just so enthusiastic about it. So there's a lot of money out there that's available, and so just people in this call need to be aware of that go out there and find those individuals that are 45, 50, 55, 60 plus in age, and they may be at your investment group, they may be at the Chamber of Commerce meetings, but get out there and network with those people because most of them have IRA accounts, and most of them don't realize they can self-direct it and invest in real estate. So
exactly.
Anyway.
Yep.
Well, fantastic. Well, Charles, you discussed that we talked about the Shark Tank. We talked about the white paper. We talked about the video about the 5 horrors of due diligence. But you've got a couple other things that you offer, through your website. You offer a couple different seminars. I know multiple different times a year you do these seminars. You do one on due diligence. I think you do another one on Internet Apartment Deal Finder. You have a software program that's for sale on your website, multiple different free reports. You offer legal services for investors. You have a mastermind program. Can you give us just a broad overview of these different services and seminars that you put on and how they may be able to help the people on the call?
Sure. One of my most favorite programs that I offer is my mastermind program. It's $7. I think if you go to my website, any one of my websites, the multifamilyinvestingacademy.com, and the DobensLaw.com. You'll get one of those boxes that pop up to join my email list. And I know one of my new giveaways is my ebook, The 25 Mistakes New Investors Make in Multifamily Business, and that's a lot of fun. Checking out some of those. But that'll link you to an offer for my mastermind program of, I think it's $7 for the first 2 weeks, and it's $97 a month after that. Quit whenever you want. But that's a fun one because that gives you information every single week, either a video, a question and answer, a bonus video, a group session, a Facebook group, but it gets you constantly involved in this business. And that's why I say, you cannot be in this business by attending a 3-day boot camp and coming home and thinking you're in the business. You've got to work at this business a little bit every single day. And that's the concept behind the mastermind program, is it keeps you involved. It touches you all throughout the week and keeps you focused on making sure you're making offers or talking to brokers or looking at deals. That's the key. If you're doing that, you're going to be in this business. If you're not doing it, you're not going to be in this business. So the mastermind is one of the programs. And then the other end of the spectrum is my mentorship program, which is where, that's where you really have interaction with me, and that's where we really try to remove all of the hoops that new investors find when they jump into these deals. We will provide you, my mentorship students get up to $50,000 access for their earnest money deposit funds. We will provide them with proof of funds letters. We will introduce them to key sponsors or key principals in order to qualify for mortgages. So we really give them all the things they need in order to make the deal happen. And then, the other things that we have is, like you said, my courses. If you go to the multifamilyinvestingacademy.com website and click on events, you can go to the events page. You can see all the places that I'm speaking all throughout the country all this year. They're already up on the internet site. Sacramento, Anaheim, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Tampa. I think we're doing Atlanta again, Denver, Colorado. So we're all over the country this year, different events at different locations. But those are typically 2 or 3 day events where it is just total education, total training for everybody. I'm all about education, making sure you get everything that you need. So those are really, I have my Internet Deal Finder Home Study program. We go through a lot of that stuff at the seminars. But it's really, I'm also pretty accessible, which is probably my fault. And but I want to make sure if you get something going on, I don't want to see you do something wrong. Pick up the phone and call me or shoot me an email and just say, hey, I'm thinking about buying this property. I'm thinking about making this offer. Is it okay if I word it this way? And, just 5 minutes on the phone, I might be able to protect you and keep you straight. Mm-hmm. One of the things, my rule is always remain in control of the deal. And, there are ways that people can screw that up by percent. I always describe it, you never ask for a second mortgage when you're making an offer on a multifamily property. But you always ask for seller financing.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
They call it a second mortgage. That's the key. And so we talked about that over the weekends as well.
Okay. Well, fantastic. Well, Charles, I thank you so much for coming on the show today. You shared a ton of wisdom with us and some great knowledge. I mean, from someone that's been in the trenches for a number of years and has seen a little bit of everything. So, but before you go, what I'd love for you to do is just pick one golden nugget that you could share with our audience. One golden nugget that may help inspire them and help them on their way to the path of success in real estate investing. What would that one golden nugget be?
I'll tell you, the right answer, I've seen this, I've made the mistake myself, I've seen it be successful in other people, we just talked about it. Slow and steady wins the race. Don't think you're going to be a millionaire in multifamily in 6 months. But if you do it right, in 6 years, you will have more money and a phenomenal business that you've ever dreamed of having. So slow and steady wins the race.
Fantastic. Well, that's great advice. And Charles, again, we thank you for your time, and you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Great. Thanks, Kevin.
Hey guys, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed the discussion with Charles as much as I enjoyed speaking with him. And I can tell you that I took away a lot of great information from our phone call, and I hope you did as well. And I hope you're able to take notes and find just a few things that you may be able to put into action in your business today. And one thing that you definitely need to put into action to your business is the tips and tricks that you're going to learn in my free guide that you can get on my website. You can find the guide at kevinbupp.com/guide. And it's called The 7 Habits of Highly Successful Multifamily Investors. And I wrote this, and I follow these 7 steps on a daily basis. It just really shows you how to put together an awesome team, proper steps that you need to take as you're looking at deals, analyzing deals, and just making sure that you have a structure in place that will ensure your success. So definitely be sure to go grab that again, kevinbupp.com/guide, and you can download your free copy. And as always, I'd like to give a shout out to someone that, the previous week had downloaded the guide from my website, and this week the shout out is going to Sharon from Orlando, Florida. Sharon, thank you for downloading the guide, and as always, if there's any questions in addition to what you find in that guide that you'd like to ask regarding multifamily or commercial investing, feel free to shoot me an email directly, kevin@kevinbupp.com. And guys, this podcast is only as good as you. And that's it. I wouldn't be doing it if it weren't for you listeners. We're having great ratings. We're getting a lot of listeners, new subscribers, and I'd like to keep that trend going. But in order to do that, I need your feedback. I need your review on iTunes. I need you to give me 5 stars. Or you know what? If you think I only deserve 3 stars, give me 3 stars. If you've got negative feedback for me, I'd suggest that you give it to me first before putting it on iTunes, because it will affect our rankings, but I can't keep you from doing that. But I'm all about honesty and transparency, and I can only change this podcast and make it better if I have feedback from you. So please take a few minutes, go leave feedback, give me a 5-star rating if you feel I deserve a 5-star rating. That's it for this week, guys. Thanks again for listening, and as always, go make some cash flow happen.
Congratulations! Now you've got more of the best tricks of the trade in building massive amounts of passive income from real estate. For more amazing resources, visit realestateinvestingforcashflow.com, and we'll see you next Monday morning.